the sonar operator's voice cracks over the intercom. Contact, bearing 090, range 1500 yards. It's 0150 hours on May 24th, 1944. The Pacific Ocean, 225 nautical miles northwest of Cavieng, New Ireland. Lieutenant Commander Walton Pendleton grips the railing of USS England's bridge as his destroyer escort pitches through midnight swells. Somewhere beneath the black water, Japanese submarine RO-116 twists and turns, her commander throwing the rudder hard over in violent evasive maneuvers designed to throw off sonar contact. This is England's fourth submarine kill in 5 days. An impossible streak, a feat that naval historians will later call the greatest anti-submarine campaign in maritime warfare history. But right now, none of that matters, because RO-116's captain knows the playbook. He's zigzagging erratically, shifting course every 30 seconds, employing sonar jamming techniques with bursts of tuned sound impulses. Standard depth charges would never touch him. The explosions would blind England's sonar for 20 critical minutes, more than enough time for the submarine to escape into the dark Pacific depths. What RO-116's commander doesn't know is that England is carrying a weapon he's never encountered. A weapon so unorthodox, so seemingly backwards, that when it first arrived, seasoned naval officers dismissed it as suicidal. Some called it illegal. Others said it violated every principle of anti-submarine warfare. The statistics told the brutal truth. In early 1943, conventional depth charge attacks achieved roughly a 3% success rate against enemy submarines. 3%. For every 100 attacks, 97 submarines escaped. Allied ships were dropping thousands of depth charges into the ocean, and the U-boats and Japanese submarines were winning the underwater war. By May 1944, 25 Japanese submarines prowled the Pacific, establishing a defensive picket line called NA between the Admiralty Islands and Truk. American planners knew that breaking through this underwater wall was essential. The invasion of the Marianas depended on it. Thousands of Marines would storm those beaches in June, but only if the submarine threat could be neutralized. What the Japanese High Command didn't know was that one humble destroyer escort, a small warship commanded by a middle-aged officer with an unusual hands-off leadership style, was about to shatter their entire submarine defensive strategy in less than 2 weeks. The weapon responsible would revolutionize naval warfare. But first, it had to overcome decades of doctrine, bureaucratic resistance, and the entrenched wisdom of naval experts who insisted it would never work. This is the story of how desperation, ingenuity, and one man's willingness to trust an unconventional weapon changed the course of World War II. To understand why England's weapon seemed so radical, you need to understand just how badly the Allies were losing the underwater war in 1942 and early 1943. The Atlantic Ocean had become a graveyard. German U-boats prowled the shipping lanes like wolves, sinking merchant vessels faster than Allied shipyards could replace them. In the Pacific, Japanese submarines successfully torpedoed the carrier USS Wasp. The heavy cruiser USS Indianapolis would later fall victim, and submarine attacks threatened every amphibious landing from Guadalcanal to the Philippines. The submarine threat was strangling Allied operations on 2 fronts. The Allied response relied almost entirely on depth charges, cylindrical drums packed with 300 pounds of high explosive. The concept seemed simple enough. A destroyer detects a submarine with sonar, races to the contact point, and drops charges set to explode at estimated depth. The concussive force of multiple near misses would theoretically crack the submarine's pressure hull or force it to the surface. But the reality was far different. Depth charges had fundamental, crippling weaknesses that experienced submarine commanders exploited ruthlessly. First, the timing problem. Ships dropped depth charges off the stern while moving at speed. By the time the charges sank to detonation depth, often 200 feet or more, the submarine had 30 to 45 seconds to maneuver away. Skilled submarine captains used this window to execute radical course changes. Some would reverse direction entirely. Others would dive deeper or rise shallower, moving perpendicular to the attack vector. Second, the blindness problem. When depth charges detonated, the underwater explosions created massive sonic disruptions that rendered the attacking ship's sonar completely useless for 15 to 20 minutes. The submarine could hear everything: the destroyer's propellers, the splashes of additional depth charges, but the destroyer heard nothing. It was like being blindfolded in a knife fight. During those critical minutes of sonar blackout, submarines regularly escaped. Third, the depth-setting gamble. Before dropping each charge, the crew had to manually set a hydrostatic fuse to explode at a specific depth: 50 feet, 100 feet, 150 feet. But the attacking ship never knew the submarine's actual depth. Captains had to guess. Set the charges too shallow, they exploded harmlessly above the target. Too deep, and the submarine slipped away beneath them. The submarine commander knew his own depth precisely. The destroyer captain was throwing dice. The numbers reflected these weaknesses brutally. Analysis from the first half of 1943 showed conventional depth charge attacks achieved approximately a 5% success rate. The Royal Navy conducted 554 depth charge attacks between January and June 1943, resulting in only 27.5 confirmed submarine kills, many of those requiring multiple ships and dozens of attacks. Naval experts convened conferences and symposiums. They proposed solutions: drop more, depth charges per attack. Some escorts carried racks for 60 charges or more. Use coordinated attacks with multiple ships. Develop better sonar. The British introduced the K-gun, a side-throwing projector that hurled charges laterally to create a wider pattern. These improvements helped marginally. By late 1943, success rates crept up to perhaps 6 or 7%. Better, but still catastrophically inadequate. The consensus among Allied naval commanders remained clear. Finding submarines was possible with improved radar and sonar, but killing them required massive expenditures of depth charges, multiple ships, and often hours of sustained attack. The operational mathematics were grim. If the Allies couldn't dramatically improve their submarine kill rate, the war at sea would continue bleeding ships, supplies, and sailors. Every failed attack meant another convoy torpedoed, another transport sunk, another landing postponed. The Japanese understood their advantage. Their submarine commanders received training in specific evasion tactics. The moment they detected an approaching destroyer, they would calculate the ship's instantaneous echo range, the minimum distance at which sonar could detect them, and execute predetermined escape maneuvers. By early 1944, the situation demanded something revolutionary. Not incremental improvement, not another variant of conventional weapons. It demanded something experts would initially call impossible. Lieutenant John A. Williamson stands in USS England's cramped Combat Information Center, studying a new piece of equipment that most destroyer captains regard with deep suspicion. It's February 1944. England has just completed her shakedown cruise off San Francisco and is preparing for deployment to the South Pacific. Williamson serves as the ship's executive officer, second in command under Lieutenant Commander Walton Pendleton. At first glance, neither man fits the Hollywood image of a maverick naval innovator. Pendleton, 46 years old, is a career Navy officer who practices an unusual hands-off command style. Born in Globe, Arizona in 1897, he'd spent decades working his way through the ranks in the peacetime Navy, a slow grind that left him commanding a small escort vessel while younger officers led cruisers and destroyers. Most officers his age occupied desks in Washington. Pendleton got a destroyer escort. Williamson came from Atlantic convoy duty, where he'd watched U-boats slip away from depth charge attacks time and time again. Neither man had attended the Naval War College's submarine warfare school. Neither had published papers on anti-submarine tactics. They weren't experts. They were practitioners, officers who'd spent enough time hunting submarines to recognize that conventional methods weren't working. The weapon Williamson studies is called the Hedgehog. It looks bizarre, a steel cradle holding 24 spigots arranged in 4 rows of 6. Each spigot would launch a 7-inch projectile weighing 65 pounds with 35 pounds of explosive. When fired, all 24 projectiles would arc through the air and splash down in an elliptical pattern about 200 yards ahead of the ship. Every instinct trained into Williamson tells him this weapon violates fundamental principles. Traditional doctrine says you attack submarines from behind, dropping depth charges off the stern. The Hedgehog shoots forward. Doctrine says you set charges to explode at depth, whether they hit or miss, using concussive force to damage the submarine. The Hedgehog projectiles carry contact fuses. They only explode if they physically strike the submarine. Miss completely, and there's no explosion at all. Doctrine says heavy explosions boost crew morale and help you maintain sonar contact by marking the target area. The Hedgehog's silence seems like psychological torture. Either the submarine dies instantly, or nothing happens. But Williamson sees something the experts missed. The Hedgehog's forward-throwing design means the ship maintains sonar contact throughout the entire attack. No blindness, no 20-minute blackout where the submarine escapes, and the contact fuses mean crystal clear immediate feedback. Explosion equals kill. Silence equals miss. No waiting, no uncertainty, no debris analysis. He runs the mathematics. A standard depth charge needs to explode within 20 feet to crack a submarine's hull, but it has to explode at the right depth first. A gamble. A single Hedgehog projectile exploding on contact breaches the hull immediately. The elliptical pattern spreads 24 bombs across a 100-foot circle. The submarine only needs to be somewhere in that circle. Williamson takes his analysis to Commander Pendleton. The captain listens, nods, and makes a decision that will alter naval history. We're going to trust this weapon. We're going to master it. We're going to prove it works. What neither man knows is that Navy headquarters has received reports of Hedgehog success rates in the Atlantic. The early data shows 5% effectiveness, barely better than depth charges. But Williamson suspects those crews are using the weapon wrong. He's about to prove it. USS England arrives at Purvis Bay, Florida Island in the Solomon Islands in April 1944. While other destroyer escorts conduct routine patrols, Williamson transforms England's anti-submarine warfare approach. There's no secret laboratory, no classified research facility, just a determined executive officer running drill after drill after drill in the tropical heat. Williamson gathers England's sonar team, young sailors, most barely out of their teens. He explains his theory. The Hedgehog only fails when crews lose precise sonar contact during the attack run. Traditional depth charging taught sailors to estimate, to approximate, to maintain a general sense of where the submarine might be. The Hedgehog demands absolute precision. We need to know exactly where that submarine is when we fire, Williamson tells his team. Not close, not approximate, exact. He institutes procedures that seem obsessive to other crews. England's sonar operators train to track submarines through their most violent evasive maneuvers. They practice calculating submarine depth, speed, and course simultaneously, variables that most crews estimated separately. Williamson drills them on maintaining contact during those critical final seconds before weapons release. The approach draws criticism. Officers from other destroyer escorts watch England conduct practice runs and shake their heads. Some openly question whether Williamson understands modern anti-submarine warfare. You don't need that much precision with depth charges. You saturate an area with explosions. That's how it's done. That's doctrine. "You're wasting time," one destroyer captain tells Pendleton during a briefing at Tulagi. "The Hedgehog's a gimmick. You need heavy depth charges to kill submarines. Contact fuses are suicide. One malfunction, and you've given away your position for nothing." A submarine warfare instructor from Pearl Harbor reviews England's training reports and sends back a terse assessment. Recommends standard depth charge tactics. Hedgehog success rates do not justify specialized training investment. The British, who invented the Hedgehog, report that their own success rates with the weapon hover around 5%, barely better than conventional attacks. Their analysis suggests the weapon's limitations outweigh its advantages. But Williamson notices something in the British reports. The successful attacks all share common elements: steady speed during approach, continuous sonar contact, and firing at optimum range. Not too close, not too far. The failures happen when crews lose contact or fire hastily. He adjusts England's procedures accordingly. The ship practices attack runs where they deliberately do not fire unless all parameters are perfect. Better to abort and reset than to waste 24 projectiles on a low-probability shot. Other crews think England's standards are too strict. "You'll never fire that weapon in combat," one officer jokes, "because you'll never meet all your precious conditions." Williamson ignores them. He knows from Atlantic convoy duty that rushed depth charge attacks rarely succeed. Patience and precision win submarine battles. By mid-May 1944, England's crew can maintain sonar contact through submarine evasive maneuvers that would break most ships' tracking. They can calculate firing solutions in seconds. The sonar operators work in seamless coordination with the weapons crew. They've trained for a level of precision that the Navy's anti-submarine warfare establishment considers unnecessary. They're about to demonstrate that precision is everything. The message arrives at Purvis Bay on May 13, 1944. Fleet Radio Unit Pacific has intercepted and decoded Japanese submarine I-16's transmission, revealing its estimated arrival off Bougainville on May 22. Commander Hamilton Haynes, commanding Escort Division 39, orders a 3-ship hunter-killer group to intercept USS George, USS Raby, and England. All 3 are Buckley-class destroyer escorts, virtually identical in capabilities. All 3 carry Hedgehogs. But only England has trained with Williamson's obsessive precision standards. On May 19, 1944, at 13:35 hours, England gains sonar contact on I-16 approximately 140 miles northeast of Cape Alexander, Solomon Islands. I-16 is no rookie submarine. She launched the first midget submarine attack on Pearl Harbor. She torpedoed HMS Ramillies at Madagascar. She conducted supply runs to Guadalcanal through the worst months of that campaign. Her crew knows every evasion tactic in the Japanese playbook, and I-16's commander employs all of them. Radical course changes, full rudder shifts every 30 seconds, diving and rising to change depth. The submarine twists through the water like a wounded animal. England fires her first Hedgehog spread. Nothing. The projectiles splash down and sink in silence. No explosion. The weapons officer glances at Williamson, uncertainty crossing his face. Standard procedure would be to switch to depth charges now. At least those create explosions, give the appearance of aggressive action. Maintain sonar contact, Williamson orders calmly. Reset. We fire when we have the solution. Second spread. Silence again. No detonation. The radio crackles. George and Raby are asking if England needs support. The implicit question underneath, does England's crew know what they're doing? Pendleton replies simply, negative. We have contact. Continuing attack. Third spread. This time, one projectile detonates, but I-16 keeps maneuvering. The big type C-1 submarine's hull is tough enough to survive a single hit. Fourth spread. Silence. Still no kill. On the bridge, tension mounts. England has now fired 96 Hedgehog projectiles, most of her available ammunition, at a single submarine. Traditional doctrine says you expend this many weapons across multiple targets, not obsessively pursuing one contact. Williamson checks the sonar plot. I-16 is weakening. The submarine's maneuvers are becoming less erratic, more predictable. That single hit damaged something. The Japanese captain is running out of options. Fifth attack, Williamson announces. Fire when ready. England steadies on course. The Hedgehog spigots launch with their characteristic rapid-fire sequence. Chunk, 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 chunk. 24 projectiles arc into the air and splash down ahead of the ship. For 3 seconds, nothing. Then the ocean erupts. Not one explosion, multiple detonations, one after another after another. The massive underwater blast lifts England's fantail clear out of the water. Sailors grab railings to keep their footing. 20 minutes later, debris rises to the surface. Oil, wood, pieces of equipment. I-16 is gone. All 107 hands lost. The radio traffic from George and Raby changes tone. Skepticism becomes respect. But the real test comes 3 days later. On May 22nd at 0351 hours, George gains radar contact on submarine RO-106 on the surface. George and Raby attack first, both equipped with Hedgehogs, both trained in conventional tactics. George's attack misses. RO-106 dives and begins violent evasive maneuvers. England, move in, Commander Haynes orders. At 0425, England gains sonar contact, the same precision approach, the same disciplined fire control. First spread misses. But RO-106 makes a critical mistake. She reverses course, possibly attempting to torpedo England, apparently not understanding the forward-firing weapon system. England's second Hedgehog spread hits with at least 3 projectiles. RO-106 disappears from sonar. All 49 hands lost. 2 submarines in 3 days, using a weapon that most of the Navy considers marginal. Then comes May 23rd, then May 24th, then May 26th. By the time England returns to Cmdr Harbor to replenish Hedgehog ammunition on May 27th, she's sunk 5 Japanese submarines in 8 days. George and Raby, using conventional depth charge and Hedgehog tactics, have scored 0 kills despite multiple attacks on the same targets. The room at Escort Division headquarters erupts when the reports arrive. Some officers refuse to believe it. Others demand to know England's secret. A few insist the kills must have been shared, that George and Raby's earlier attacks weakened the submarines. But the sonar records tell the unambiguous truth. England's Hedgehog projectiles struck and killed 5 submarines that other ships had failed to sink with conventional tactics. Commander Haynes sends a message that will become naval legend. Oh hell, go ahead, England. Give her every submarine contact. Let her prove this isn't luck. If you're fascinated by these incredible true stories of innovation in warfare, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We publish new documentary-style deep dives into military history every week. Drop a comment telling us which theater of Wechstuckau you want us to cover next. We read every single one. The final test comes on the night of May 30th, 1944. RO-105, under the command of Lieutenant Junichi Inoue, receives a warning from Japanese 6th Fleet intelligence. Multiple submarines have been sunk in the area north of the Admiralty Islands. The intercepted American communications are described as increasingly jubilant. 2 other submarines, RO-112 and RO-109 receive the same warning and immediately clear the area. RO-105 either doesn't receive the warning or chooses to remain on station. Fatal mistake. By this point, England has joined a larger hunter-killer task group centered on escort carrier USS Hoggett Bay, including destroyers Hazelwood and McCord, and destroyer escort Spangler. The task force includes some of the most experienced anti-submarine warfare officers in the Pacific Fleet. At 2303 hours on May 30th, USS Raby gains radar contact on RO-105 at range of 15,000 yards, about 110 nautical miles northeast of Seidler Harbor. The submarine dives immediately and deploys every evasion technique in the Japanese submarine warfare manual. What follows is a textbook demonstration of why conventional anti-submarine warfare so often fails. Hazelwood attacks first with sonar contact, dropping multiple patterns of depth charges. The explosions create massive water columns visible even in darkness. The destroyer's crew reports solid contact and probable kill. But when the sonic disruption clears, RO-105 is still there, still maneuvering, still fighting for survival. The submarine commander discharges debris and oil slicks, a deception technique designed to make attackers think they've scored a kill and break off the attack. USS George moves in next, making several Hedgehog attacks. At least 3 projectiles appear to hit, but RO-105's hull, though damaged, holds. The submarine continues evasive maneuvers through the night. By dawn on May 31st, RO-105 has survived 8 hours of sustained attacks by 3 different warships using both conventional depth charges and Hedgehogs. This is exactly the scenario that makes submarine warfare so frustrating. A skilled commander in a well-built submarine can survive dozens of attacks if the attacking ships can't maintain precise tracking. At 0730 hours, England and Spangler join the attack. Commander Haynes, the task group commander aboard USS George, watches Spangler make a Hedgehog attack run. Miss. The submarine continues maneuvering, damaged but refusing to die. Then Haynes makes the decision that cements England's reputation. Over the radio comes his now famous transmission. "Oh hell, go ahead, England. Give the submarine killer her shot." Williamson takes over the attack coordination personally. England's sonar team locks onto RO-105. 8 hours of attacks have exhausted the Japanese crew. Their evasive maneuvers are slower now, more predictable. The submarine is wounded, but a wounded animal can still escape if the hunter's aim isn't perfect. England steadies on her attack course. The range closes. Williamson monitors the sonar plot, calculating the submarine's exact position, depth, speed, and bearing. He waits for the convergence of all parameters, the moment when every variable aligns. "Fire," he orders. The Hedgehog cradle launches its spread of 24 projectiles. They arc forward and splash down in their elliptical pattern directly above RO-105's position. The ocean detonates with massive underwater explosions. 4 to 6 projectiles strike home. The sonar operator hears the distinctive sounds of bulkheads collapsing, air rushing from ruptured hull sections. RO-105 breaks apart beneath the Pacific. All 55 hands lost. Japan's submarine defensive picket line, Operation Ago's underwater shield, effectively shattered. 6 submarines sunk in 12 days, all by a single destroyer escort, all using the weapon that experts said would never achieve high success rates. The numbers tell the revolutionary story. Before England's patrol, Hedgehog weapons in both Atlantic and Pacific operations achieved approximately 5% success rates, barely better than conventional depth charges. Analysis suggested the weapon had limited utility. England's success rate during those 12 days, 100%. Every submarine she engaged with proper sonar contact was destroyed. but the impact extended far beyond simple kill ratios. Traditional depth charge attacks required an average of 60 attacks to sink one submarine, based on British Royal Navy data from 1943-1944. England sank 6 submarines with fewer than 15 attack runs total. Most submarines died within 2 or 3 Hedgehog spreads once England's sonar team established proper tracking. The operational efficiency was staggering. A standard depth charge attack consumed 20-30 charges per attack run, with most destroyer escorts carrying 60-100 total charges. England's entire campaign against 6 submarines used fewer than 200 Hedgehog projectiles, equivalent in explosive weight to perhaps 50 depth charges. More critically, England's average engagement time from initial contact to confirmed kill was under 2 hours. Conventional depth charge battles often lasted 6 to 8 hours, sometimes extending across multiple days. The British anti-submarine sloop HMS Starling, the most successful ASW ship in the Atlantic, typically required sustained attacks lasting many hours per submarine kill. The tactical implications revolutionized anti-submarine doctrine almost overnight. England's success demonstrated that precision mattered more than explosive power, that maintaining continuous sonar contact was more valuable than creating massive explosions, that one well-placed contact-fused projectile could accomplish what dozens of depth charges could not. Japanese submarine commanders who survived the war later testified to their confusion during these attacks. They were trained to listen for the characteristic sounds of depth charges being rolled off a destroyer's stern, the warning that gave them 30-45 seconds to maneuver. The Hedgehog gave no such warning. Projectiles simply appeared above the submarine, with no acoustic signature until impact. Some Japanese captains reported they never heard the attacking ship at all, just sudden explosions against their hulls. The strategic impact was equally profound. Japan had positioned 25 submarines in the Central Pacific to defend against the anticipated American invasion. By June 1944, when American forces invaded the Marianas, 17 of those submarines had been sunk. England alone accounted for 6, nearly a quarter of Japan's submarine defensive force eliminated by a single destroyer escort in less than 2 weeks. The amphibious landings at Saipan, Tinian, and Guam proceeded with minimal submarine interference. American carriers operated freely, enabling the aerial superiority that led to the Marianas Turkey Shoot, where Japanese naval aviation was effectively destroyed. The submarine shield that was supposed to protect Japan's inner defensive perimeter had been shattered, in part by one ship using one unconventional weapon with unprecedented precision. Upon learning of England's achievement, Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Ernest J. King sent a message that echoed across the Pacific Fleet. There'll always be an England in the United States Navy. The research that goes into these videos takes dozens of hours and access to naval archives most people never see. If you want to support this channel and help us keep bringing you these incredible untold stories, hit the like button and consider checking out our Patreon, where we share extended interviews, rare documents, and behind-the-scenes research. Link in the description. USS England received the Presidential Unit Citation, the Navy's highest unit honor. Lieutenant Commander Walton Pendleton received 1 Navy Cross for all 6 submarine sinkings. Not 6 Navy Crosses, 1. The Navy's awards bureaucracy apparently couldn't comprehend a feat so unprecedented that it broke their recognition system. Pendleton never sought publicity. After the war, he retired quietly, living until his 80s without ever writing a memoir or giving interviews to popular media. When historians tracked him down decades later, he consistently deflected credit to his crew, particularly to John Williamson. Williamson received even less recognition. He took command of England after Pendleton rotated to other duties, and was commanding the ship on May 9, 1945, when 3 kamikaze aircraft attacked off Okinawa. One crashed into England's superstructure just below the bridge, its bomb detonating and killing 37 sailors. Williamson brought his burning ship under control, prevented magazines from exploding, and successfully withdrew England to Kerama for repairs. No major medal for that action either. Just another officer doing his duty. The numbers from England's campaign eventually forced the Navy to fundamentally reconsider the Hedgehog weapon. Analysis teams discovered that when used with proper precision sonar tracking, the methods Williamson developed, Hedgehog's success rates jumped from 5% to approximately 20-25%. Still, not England's incredible 100%, but enough to make it the most effective anti-submarine weapon of World War II. By war's end, over 1,000 Hedgehog systems had been installed on Allied vessels. The weapon was credited with sinking at least 47 German U-boats and 14 Japanese submarines. British figures showed that submarines attacked with Hedgehogs had a 1 in 6 chance of being sunk, compared to 1 in 60 with conventional depth charges. The Hedgehog's influence extended decades beyond World War II. The Soviet Navy developed the RBU series of anti-submarine rocket launchers based directly on Hedgehog principles. The Russian Navy still uses descendants of these weapons today. The RBU 6000 remains standard equipment on many Russian surface combatants, firing 12 contact fuse projectiles in a circular pattern up to 6,000 meters. Western navies phased out the Hedgehog in favor of homing torpedoes by the 1960s, but the fundamental lesson, precision matters more than explosive power, shaped all subsequent anti-submarine weapons development. England herself survived the kamikaze hit, but was so heavily damaged that the Navy deemed repairs not cost-effective. She was sold for scrap in 1946. A second USS England, guided missile cruiser CG-22, served from 1963 to 1994, participating in Vietnam operations and Desert Storm. Since her decommissioning, Admiral King's promise has remained unkept. There is currently no USS England in the United States Navy. The moral of this story isn't just about one remarkable weapon or one exceptional crew. It's about the courage to question expert consensus when the data suggests a better way forward. It's about precision over power, patience over aggression, training over tradition. Williamson and Pendleton weren't brilliant inventors. They didn't develop revolutionary technology. They simply had the humility to recognize that conventional wisdom was failing, and the discipline to master an unconventional solution that experts dismissed. In 12 days in May 1944, they proved that sometimes the backwards approach is the only one that works, because the submarine kills were real, the lives saved were real, and the lesson remains: question everything, trust the data, and never confuse what's traditional with what's effective.